Welcome back to Close Up. After a hard-fought gubernatorial primary contest, Senate Majority Leader Dan Feltes has emerged the winner and is laying the groundwork for what Democrats hope will be the campaign to oust Chris Sununu from the corner office. Senator Feltes, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Adam.
So this is a presidential election year, and the polls indicate Governor Sununu is on track to peel off some Democratic votes. What about your crossover appeal? If someone walks up to you in a red MAGA hat and says, "I'm thinking about voting for Dan Feltes," how do you respond?
Unlike the current governor, I grew up in a working class family. My dad wasn't governor like Chris Sununu. My brother wasn't a U.S. senator. I was never gifted a ski resort. I worked as a legal aid lawyer, helping working families. I grew up in a working class family. My dad worked in a furniture factory for 45 years, same one on air conditioning, doing roughly the same job, day in and day out for 45 years. My mom, part-time jobs while doing the night shift. And in the state Senate, been fighting for working people and working families every step of the way. And this governor, Chris Sununu, 79 vetoes, 65 of which had bipartisan support. And a lot of those vetoes, Adam, dealt with helping working people and working families, minimum wage, prevailing wage, paid family and medical leave insurance. And Chris Sununu hasn't done anything for our schools, leaving our families, our schools, our teachers in the lurch this fall. So I think working people, I think people of all political stripes understand that we don't have a governor that's looking out for working people and working families. That's what I've done my entire life. That's what I'll do as governor.
You did call on Governor Sununu to stop President Trump from coming to New Hampshire to hold a rally that happened in Londonderry for fears it would trigger a cluster of COVID illness. So far, contact tracing has revealed no COVID-19 cases related to that event. But UNH has already had a documented COVID cluster due to a fraternity party. So why is President Trump not allowed to have a rally, but UNH gets to continue having class even though they're creating more cases?
Well, look, I think we know from early results that there hasn't been as much of a problem as people had thought and worried about. We do know from Trump's rallies elsewhere that there was a significant uptick, and some of that uptick was seen down the road quite a bit. So I think the jury's out on what kind of impact that had. Certainly, we need to advance public health across the board. We're the only state in New England without a common sense public mask requirement. And not doing a school reopening plan, which is what Chris Sununu has refused to do. He punted it down to the local level, just like Trump punted it down to the states. Not doing that, not having public health guidance or standards or support for our schools is a public health issue. And again, Sununu punted it down just like Trump punted it down to the states. It's no surprise Chris Sununu calls himself, in his own words, Adam, his own words, he calls himself a Trump guy through and through, unquote. Sununu's own words. We're better than that. And we got to look out for public health. And right now, Chris Sununu has no plans about how we move forward on public health. No plans about how we get out of this mess in a way that actually works for working people and working families. People like my dad, who worked in a furniture factory for 45 years. People like folks all across New Hampshire who have lost their jobs in COVID. Small business owners who are left out and left behind. Chris Sununu's Main Street Relief Fund, quote unquote, gave $350,000 a pop to big corporations, many of which were corporate campaign donors to him. Small businesses are being left out. Working people and working families are being left out. And I don't think now is the time for Chris Sununu to take a victory lap on COVID, when over 400 Crandon State families have lost loved ones, when thousands are out of work, and when hundreds are losing their homes, renters and homeowners. And Chris Sununu vetoed common sense protection to protect people's homes. You know, Adam, during the last economic crisis, the Great Recession, I helped low to middle income families and seniors and veterans get back up on their feet. I battled Wall Street banks who were foreclosing on folks all across New Hampshire, including people like Carl and Pauline, who saved up, bought a modest home, but the home of their dreams. Fell behind on bills during the last crisis, the Great Recession. Next thing you know, they get a foreclosure notice from a Wall Street bank, help to save their home. So many people across New Hampshire are losing their homes right now. So many people are out of work. And working families are struggling from everything from daycare to the absence of a school reopening plan from Chris Sununu. And Chris Sununu has not even demonstrated or articulated why is he running for a third term? What are his plans to help people? And sure, early on, he took some of the steps of surrounding governors, but right now, he's not doing his job. no school reopening plan, no help for working people and working families. And Adam, we have got to get out of this mess.
And Senator, we do want to turn to the social justice issues here. In the Granite State debate last month, you did call for the commutation of the death sentence of Michael Addison, who killed a Manchester police officer in 2006. In the Senate, you supported legislation to prospectively repeal the death penalty, that is, moving forward, technically leaving the Addison sentence untouched. Did your position change here?
Well, Adam, the killing of Officer Briggs by Michael Addison was a heinous crime. And Michael Addison should not walk the streets ever again. And what I said during the debate was we ought to move forward with the commutation process. Any first-time commutation petition should have a process. And in this particular situation, with the facts that we know, I highly doubt that the Executive Council would vote to commute. But if it did, I would negate that vote. And the problem here, Adam, is Chris Sununu says we shouldn't even go through a process, setting the state up for possible litigation because he doesn't even think a commutation petition should have a process. That's not right. And either Chris Sununu doesn't know the law or he thinks he's above the law. And no one's above the law, even if your last name is Sununu. And to politicize this particular situation, as Chris Sununu has done, look, I will never politicize this situation. It's not appropriate to politicize the killing of a cop. And right now, we need to be working together. And I reject this suggestion you can't support law enforcement while supporting those marching for change. I support both. And we need to bring people together right now, Adam. That's my focus. I'm not going to look for opportunities as governor to score political points. I'm going to look for opportunities to work together in common cause and common purpose.
Speaking of working together, you've promised the Black Lives Matter movement in Manchester and Nashua that you would take action in your first 300 days as governor to reduce disproportionate racial incarceration at the state prison. Can you give the public a sense of how many inmates you expect to release?
Well, I mean, I think I don't know the exact answer to that, Adam, but I can tell you that the policies that I would promote would, sentencing reform, common sense criminal justice reform that makes sense and focus on low-level nonviolent offenders. That's, I think, needs to be the focus. And so just as we did in common sense bail reform, working with law enforcement, working with Democrats and Republicans, we focused on making sure dangerous folks stay in jail pending their trial, and folks that are non-dangerous who can't afford bail shouldn't be, sitting in jail pending their trial of guilt and innocence. And that's good.
You promised action within 300 days, so presumably legislation might be too slow. So what kind of process are you going to employ here? Are you going to invite commutation petitions, or are you going to try to expedite parole for some of these folks? What can you do in those 300 days?
Sure. Thank you, Adam. One of the things that we laid out is a systemic review of the cases of low-level nonviolent offenders. So the Office of Racial Equity, which I would create immediately, and it would be staffed by a person of color, would undertake that review of those cases, of those inmates. And doing that systemic review would generate the list of low-level nonviolent offenders who have served their time that could be potentially pardoned or commuted. So that is a critical thing to do, Adam, because you know what? It's not good for taxpayers to keep folks locked up who are low-level nonviolent offenders. It's not good for our economy. It's not good for anyone. And so that's what we would do. First and foremost, we have to stand up on day one the Office of Racial Equity to begin that process.
Really quickly, as we wrap up here, I want to find out from you, in your commuter rail plan, would the end of the line be in Manchester? Would it be, Nashua, Manchester, or Concord?
I think we got to go to Concord. And I think, that makes good sense. And that's about jobs. And you can do this in a way with public-private partnerships that advance the jobs of tomorrow, not just in terms of the community rail itself, but also in terms of workforce, affordable housing along the line. That's a major issue in the state, Adam, as you know. We got to move forward dealing with our housing and homelessness issue, including in Manchester. So many of the initiatives we put forward were vetoed by Chris Sununu to help Manchester, to help in housing and homelessness and addiction treatment services. So we have to invest across the continuum of care and behavioral health And so this is all connected. It's all part of the bigger conversation. It's all part about how we get out of this mess in a way that actually works for working people and working families, not just those at the top, not just corporate special interests, not just people who might have Chris Sununu's cell phone number. We got to look out for everybody in this recovery and relief effort.
All right, Senator Feltes, thanks so much for your time on Close Up. We'll see you out there on the trail.
Thanks, Adam. Take care.